The committee will come to order. This is a hearing, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. Is there a security gap? I want to welcome our witnesses, and I do not have much of an opening statement. I am primarily here to listen. I want to thank our witnesses again, especially our witnesses in public safety and law enforcement, because I realize you have competing priorities. So thank you for being here. Public safety is the preeminent responsibility of the federal government. As such, we're here today to examine the security of our nation's largest transit systems, one of our nation's largest transit systems, the Washington Area Metropolitan Transit Authority. Whether you're a Washington resident or a visitor from the 4th Congressional District in South Carolina, it's important that you not only feel safe, but that you actually are safe. So I thank our distinguished panel of witnesses, and just a point of personal privilege, whenever I see uniforms, I want to thank both the chiefs for your public service. I have a special place in my heart for law enforcement and public safety officers. So thank you. And with that, I would recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Ranking Member Mr. Davis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and let me thank you for holding this hearing. I, too, would like to welcome the witnesses and thank them for coming. The events of September the 11th, 2001 brought the issue of transportation security and terrorism to prominence. Subsequent attacks in Moscow, London, and Madrid have further highlighted terrorism as a global threat to public transit. Transit security is especially challenging, due primarily to the very nature of the business. It's open, accessible to the public with predictable routes and fixed access points, and more importantly, it's the transportation of choice for the masses in urban and metropolitan areas. Further, transit officials cannot employ many of the security strategies used in aviation. Transit does not allow the conventional security methods of X-ray machines, metal detectors, and pre-screening of passengers. I do not envy the balancing act that must take place, ensuring the safety, accessibility, and convenience of the transit system, while also maintaining the attractiveness and reliability of the system. But it must be done and done well. So when people choose public transit, they should receive both a high degree of safety and security as well as convenience, all at an affordable cost. Today's hearings will look at all of these issues, but none more than security, the operation of a secure transit environment that spans multiple jurisdictions geographically, and that must integrate the specialties of multiple law enforcement agencies, depends upon interagency and jurisdictional coordination and cooperation. That can be hard to do without practice, superior communication, and rigorous oversight. I'm interested today in learning from these witnesses just how they have accomplished and improved these tasks. WMATA, similar to transit systems across the country, are constantly evaluating and evolving with new procedures, techniques, and systems to increase security. Even in my home city of Chicago, the Chicago Transit Authority recently announced this week new security initiatives, a doubling of the amount of all-angle security cameras across the rail system. And hopefully this type of initiative deters crime as well as decreases opportunities for domestic or international terrorists to attack our country. WMATA, I am certain, has similar resources, so I'm very interested in today's topic and greatly anticipate the testimony we will hear. Security is a timely and necessary topic, so I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, I thank the witnesses for coming and for their participation. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Illinois. The Chair would now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings.
I want to thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for calling this hearing. As a member of both the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform and the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, I know how critical the metro system is to the federal government and to the entire metropolitan Washington region. As a youngster who depended on the bus to take me to a better school on the other side of Baltimore, I also know how critical public transit is to, as the Metro says, opening doors. I appreciate the opportunity today's hearing provides to consider security on the Metro system. This system serves 86 stations and carries more than 500,000 passengers every day. Given their openness, transit systems are inherently vulnerable to a variety of potential security threats. This is particularly true of the Washington Metro, which is such a visible part of our nation's capital's infrastructure. It is critical that we understand the full range of threats confronting Metro, as well as any gaps that may exist in Metro's defenses. Effective security on the Metro requires a system to counter threats of terrorism, but it also requires a system to protect passengers and system operators from other possible threats. I'm deeply troubled by reports of violence against Metro bus drivers, and I want to understand what can be done to ensure drivers' safety. Given the threats that Metro and all transit systems in our nation face, it is inexplicable to me that the House appropriation for the Department of Homeland Security for fiscal year 2012, which provided funding for transit security programs, was less than half of the administration's requests. Republican leadership in the House has also proposed deep cuts across the board to other transportation programs. According to the Congressional Budget Office, maintaining the current funding baseline over the next 6 years for highway and transit programs would require $331 billion. The Republican budget would provide only $219 billion, cutting the investments in highway and transit programs by more than $100 billion. We simply cannot maintain our competitiveness as a nation by failing to make investments that enable us to build, maintain, and protect our essential transportation infrastructure. And so, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to the testimony of our witnesses. I join you, Mr. Chairman, as you salute our public employees and those in uniform. And that's very refreshing because I know you mean it. I've said it many times. So many times we've heard our public employees not treated very fairly. And I was very glad to hear you say what you said because they do so much. They are the glue to keep our nation together and keep our cities and our states together. And so, again, I thank you. And with that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Maryland. Members may have 7 days to submit opening statements and extraneous material for the record. We will now welcome our first panel of witnesses. I will introduce you from my left to right, your right to left. I'll introduce you at the same time, and then we will recognize you in that order for your 5-minute opening statement. Mr. Richard SARLES is the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of the WMATA. Chief Michael TABORN is the Chief of the Metro Transit Police Department. Kathy LANIER is the Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department. Mr. Anthony Griffin is the County Executive for the Fairfax County Government. Pursuant to committee rules, all witnesses must be sworn in before they testify, so I would respectfully ask you to please rise, and I will administer an oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Let the record reflect all the witnesses answered in the affirmative. You may be seated. Many of you are more familiar with this process than I am, so you should see a panel of lights. I am always reluctant to tell anyone who has a weapon or access to a weapon that they have to stop talking, but you will notice the green, yellow, and red, and you may do with that what you would traditionally do if you were driving with those. All right, Mr. Sarles.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Davis, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am Richard SARLES, General Manager and CEO of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, known as WMATA, or Metro. Accompanying me today is Metropolitan Transit Police Department Chief Michael TABORN. I am pleased to be here today to provide you with an update on the progress we are making at Metro in a number of critical areas, including safety, security, and returning our system to a state of good repair. I will begin by providing a short overview of Metro for those members who are not familiar with the system or new to the committee. WMATA was created in 1967 through an interstate compact between the Commonwealth of Virginia, the State of Maryland, and the District of Columbia, and approved by the U.S. Congress. Metro provides 1.2 million trips a day and is the second largest rail transit system and the sixth largest bus system in the United States. Americans from all over the nation depend on the system when visiting the capital, attending large national events. This unique role is why Metro is often referred to as America's subway. When your constituents visit Capitol Hill, Metro Rail provides safe and affordable transportation to see our nation's capital and visit your offices. Metro is also a critical Homeland Security asset and has demonstrated multiple times how important the system is in a time of crisis, such as evacuation for major weather events and national emergencies like 9/11. In particular, the Metro system is vitally important to getting Federal employees to our defense agencies such as the Pentagon and Department of Homeland Security. Approximately 40% of Metro's peak period customers are Federal employees. The Washington region was recently ranked the second most congested in the country. Without a doubt, we'd be #1 if not for the estimated 500,000 automobiles that Metro Rail and Metro Bus take off the system. Whether you ride Metro Rail or drive your car, you benefit from the system. Metro also serves as a key driver of the economy, supporting both public and private investment, and has spurred over $37 billion in economic development at or adjacent to Metro property. In these difficult economic times, that development serves as a valuable source of revenue for our State and local partners. Now let me turn to Metro security preparedness. Metro Rail is by design an open system, as was mentioned earlier, which provides unique challenges when it comes to securing against potential threats. By design, it does not lend itself to an airport-style security system. Securing our system starts with an up-to-date threat assessment, helping us determine how to most effectively use our personnel and resources and to prioritize our actions to best combat terrorism. Another important component of our security program is working each day in collaboration with the 3 jurisdictions and more than 40 law enforcement agencies in the National Capital Region, which enables us to share vital information and, when needed, added support for our security efforts. I want to thank both the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Transportation Security Administration and our local partner, Chief Lanier, for their support of Metro's Homeland Security program. In addition to working to prevent acts of terrorism, we also have to have in place plans to help us quickly respond in the event of incidents like September 11th or an attack on our system. In his testimony, Chief TABORN will provide you with even more detail on what Metro's police work to keep, how Metro's police work to keep Metro secure, but I'd like to briefly touch on the topic of safety. Safety is our top priority at Metro. While serving as interim general manager and now as the permanent CEO for the past 5 months, my personal goal has been to make sure that every employee at Metro puts safety first. Over the past 12 months, we have made great strides in addressing the recommendations of the NTSB and other agencies following the 2009 Fort Totten incident. The first $1 billion of our 6-year, $5 billion capital rebuilding program is dedicated to addressing those NTSB recommendations. I want to especially recognize this committee for playing a key role in helping to rebuild Metro. Under the leadership of then Committee Chair Tom Davis, in 2008, Congress passed a 10-year, $1.5 billion authorization, the Passenger Rail Investment and Improvement Act, otherwise known as PRIA, to address the capital needs of the WMATA system. The annual $150 million appropriation is the funding commitment Congress made in PRIA as the Federal partner, matched by WMATA's jurisdictional partners, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, for a total of $300 million a year. The $300 million represents almost 40% of our capital budget. Last year, in large measure due to the efforts of the Metro Congressional Delegation, we received $150 million in PRIA funding. Without PRIA, the progress we have made will be at grave risk. In fact, we would slide backwards. What will happen if we do not receive our Federal funding in FY12? Let me be clear on this point. Safety will come first. We will use whatever funds we have available to ensure that the system is safe. Everything else will be on the table. Unfortunately, our customers, your constituents, will bear the burden of cuts through more frequent train delays, less reliable trains and buses, deteriorated station conditions, longer lines, and delayed customer information. If our efforts are interrupted due to a lack of funding, it will ultimately affect both the safety and reliability of the system. Every day at Metro, we are making progress, but we have a long way to go. However, with the continued support of our customers, our jurisdictional partners, and Congress, we will get there. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. SARLES. Chief TABORN.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Davis, and members of the subcommittee. I, too, thank you for the opportunity to come here to testify today. I'm Michael TABORN, Chief of the Metro Transit Police for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, better known as WMATA or Metro. Mr. SARLES has provided an overview of Metro. Now I would like to provide additional details of our security programs. On June 4, 1976, President Gerald Ford signed into law a bill passed by Congress authorizing the establishment of the Metro Transit Police, better known as MTPD. The MTPD is the only tri-jurisdictional police department in the United States operating in the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the State of Maryland. The department has an authorized strength of 450 sworn officers, 153 special police officers, 13 emergency management personnel, and 35 civilian personnel. The department police officers have law enforcement jurisdictions and arrest powers throughout the 1,500 square miles within the transit zone and responsible for crimes that occur in, on, or against the Metro, Metro Rail, and all transit facilities. The Transit Police is a full-time 24/7 law enforcement agency. Within the last year, Metro Transit Police has received approximately 60,000 calls for service, and approximately 339 of those calls we received just in the last 6 months that involved suspicious persons, packages, bomb threats, or similar events. Patrol officers are deployed throughout the system with duties that are most clearly associated with traditional police work. The department's largest contingent is comprised of foot patrol officers, followed by mobile patrol, Metro bus enforcement, criminal investigations, and special operations. A year ago, the Metro Transit Police created the MetroStat to identify crime trends and hot spots, which allows us to strategically deploy our staff and resources most effectively. Using the MetroStat, information patrol commanders establish crime reduction objectives for their districts, monitor statistics and intelligence, then apply patrol tactics and/or specialized equipment to address those identified needs. To be most effective in responding and preventing crime, we enlist the help of other regional law enforcement agencies and our own customers. Officers attend community meetings, promote public awareness campaigns, and often distribute crime prevention literature. The MTPD works aggressively with regional police departments such as Chief Lanier's, local schools, and youth organizations to prevent youth disorder in the system. With respect to our security mission, as Mr. SARLES mentioned, Metro, like the majority of mass transit systems in the United States, is by design an open system. Security strategies are complex and multi-layered. The Transit Police utilize many tools supported by a variety of local, state, and federal agencies to ensure our security strategies and policies facilitate accurate and timely operational readiness to any identified threat or vulnerability. Our overall security approach combines the use of technology with enhanced operational awareness and puts an emphasis on training, public awareness outreach efforts, emergency preparedness, and the use of various security assessments that take into consideration the unique designs of our transit system. Through the Washington Metropolitan Area Council of Governments Police Chief Subcommittee, the MTP meets regularly with, again, over 40 law enforcement agencies in the National Capital Region to address current and emergency law enforcement issues, and tends to exchange information and ideas about the delivery of public safety. Further, the committee facilitates appropriate dialogue to enhance regional security and anti-terrorism efforts and plans for the safe and effective transportation of millions of passengers to the national level events such as the inauguration of the President of the United States, July 4th fireworks, National Cherry Blossom Festivals, Marine Corps marathons, and sports and entertainment events. To help coordinate law enforcement efforts with our federal partners, the Metro Transit Police has an officer assigned to the FBI Local Joint Terrorism Task Force, the National Joint Terrorism Task Force with Chief Lanier's Washington Regional Threat and Analysis Center, and the Transit Police have taken aggressive steps to combat the threat of terrorism and partnered with the Federal Transit Administration and the Transportation Security Administration. Officers use a variety of high-visibility uniform patrol techniques, technology, equipment, and national security initiatives to assist in preventing terrorism. WMATA's Security Inspection Program was launched in December of 2010, which is a tactic also used in transportation environments to effectively target prevention of terrorist activity. The SIP, which is modeled after successful programs currently in use by transit properties in the United States, including those in New Jersey, New York, and Boston. The purpose of the screening is to detect any explosive material and prevent it from being brought into the Metro system. In 2009, WMATA's anti-terrorism team, ATT, was created through a transit security grant. The team is comprised of 20 sworn police officers who provide high-visibility patrols focused on protecting transportation patrons and employees. The ATT team works closely with the Federal Air Marshals and the Transportation Security Administration to develop new strategies and techniques for combating acts of terror. Team deployment objectives include identification of system vulnerabilities, high-visibility patrol, surveillance and counter-surveillance operations, and investigation of suspicious activity, persons, or packages. The authority has made great strides in the utilization of technology to harden WMATA's infrastructure. Physical security enhancements, including lighting, fencing, access control, intrusion detection systems, bollards, guard booths at rail and bus facilities, the program response options and technology enhancements for chemical terrorism, better known as PROTECT, system is capable of detecting selected groups of chemical warfare agents within a predetermined threshold at metro stations. Simply put, PROTECT and its command and control software offers information to chemical incident operations disciplines to make more informed response decisions. Currently, we have over 7,000 cameras throughout the system. 81% of those cameras are operational. We also use customer communications in our stations, vehicles, and facilities to raise awareness and remind the public to report any suspicious behavior to the police. On any given day, WMATA patrons hear a variety of safety and security-related messages, including announcements by myself and by Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, whose announcement seeks the assistance of transit riders in identifying suspicious persons or packages in the nationally recognized "If You See Something, Say Something" campaign. Transit riders also witness high-visibility patrols in collaboration with many local, state, and federal partners. Since 2006, Congress has appropriated approximately $1.6 billion in transit security grant funds to help local transit authorities, such as Metro, to get trained personnel, participate in exercises, and raise public awareness and protect critical infrastructure. I'll close. The remaining funds are fully obligated in the sense that we've received to date $108 million in transit security grant funds. In my written testimony, we have provided detailed information on the challenges faced in spending those dollars as quickly as possible. We're working internally at Metro to expedite those processes. In addition, we have provided bipartisan leadership of the House and Senate Homeland Security Committee input on what changes need to be made in the legislation that created the grant program to streamline DHS grant programs. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide you this overview of our efforts to keep Metro safe and secure, and I will be pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you, Chief TABORN. Chief Lanier.
Good morning, Chairman Gowdy, members of the committee, Congresswoman Norton, staff, and guests. I appreciate the opportunity to present this statement on behalf of the Metropolitan Police Department on our collaborative efforts with our federal, state, and local partners to address the security in our Metro system. Today, I'll provide an overview of how MPD works with Metro on not only homeland security issues, but also highlights the joint efforts that we have to address crime and public safety. It's relevant to all of us. Obviously, mass transportation is one of the most attractive targets for anyone wanting to disrupt a major city. The TSA's Office of Intelligence concurs that mass transit and passenger rail systems are viable targets for a terrorist attack. An attack on a passenger rail system would garner attention not only because of the damage and casualties, but also because it could disrupt daily operations of a major metropolitan area for an extended period of time. As rail systems are easily accessible to the public and difficult to secure, they are extremely vulnerable to attacks as we've seen overseas. Since 2004, there have been 4 major attacks on mass transit in Moscow, Mumbai, London, and Madrid, with almost 500 total fatalities and more than 3,000 people injured. Given the possibility of an attack on Metro and the impact it would have on the district and the entire region, it is important to review how authorities in the National Capital Region work together to safeguard the transit system. Clearly, all of the law enforcement agencies in this region play a critical role in securing our transit and rail systems. Although we are often thought of as first responders, our most critical role is prevention through detection and deterrence. Through a robust suspicious activity reporting, we are uniquely positioned to detect and prevent terrorist incidents right here at home. Information provided by local police and very often the community, if discovered early and matched with the right intelligence, can help detect, disrupt, and prevent a terrorist plot. Recognizing that information sharing is critical in both preempting and responding to an attack, MPD maintains daily contact not only with Metro Transit and Amtrak Police in our Fusion Center through the intelligence analysts that are co-located with other partners around the region. In addition to tracking operational law enforcement activity and identifying emerging threats in the Fusion Center, MPD is also engaged in the Department of Homeland Security's pilot project of the TrapWire. It's a predictive software system. This system supports the use of our suspicious activity reporting to detect patterns of pre-attack surveillance and logistical planning. Beyond that, the flow of information among Federal, State, and local partners through our Joint Terrorism Task Force is excellent in the nation's capital. Our agencies have worked together for many years, sharing information and coordinating responses to a variety of situations and the many special events that take place in the nation's capital. In addition to the pre-established relationships of the members of the task force, the area chiefs of police meet on a monthly basis to address regional issues, including rail safety, through the Council of Governments. MPD also facilitates a weekly intelligence meeting with a number of our key partners that includes Metro Transit, the FBI, Secret Service, United States Capitol Police, United States Park Police, Amtrak Police, as well as the D.C. Fire and EMS. These meetings provide a forum for us to share critical information and sensitive law enforcement operations, as well as classified intelligence. As real-time information is critical in the event of a major incident, the MPD is in the process of integrating real-time computer-aided dispatch information with not only Metro Transit Police, but other law enforcement agencies around the region to enhance our situational awareness. From an operational perspective, the MPD actively participates in Metro Transit's Terrorism Identification and Deterrence Effort, or Blue Tide, through coordinated patrols in and around Metro stations. As a part of these patrols, MPD's bomb unit conducts regular sweeps to detect explosive materials, including unattended packages which have the potential to store IEDs. MPD also participates in similar programs on Operation Railsafe, which provides enhanced patrols in and around our commuter rail hubs. With so many police departments working in the region, coordinated information sharing and response planning is essential. Even beyond the National Capital Region, MPD has been participating in the Northeast Corridor Coalition since 2005. This consortium of police and transit agencies work together to enhance security planning and programming along the Amtrak rail between Washington, D.C. and Boston. This planning includes response for active shooter scenarios, as well as chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or explosive attacks. MPD and Metro Transit have a strong relationship that is grounded in a history of mutual support. From sharing crime information around Metro platforms to responding to events occurring in the transit system or overlapping jurisdictions that require efficiency and collaborative responsibilities. For major events occurring in the District of Columbia, WMATA has been quick to offer services such as buses for cooling centers, blockades, and transportation. During the school year, Metro Transit Police participate in a daily conference call with MPD to ensure situational awareness regarding the safe transport of our students after school. MPD also has assisted Metro in metering large crowds at busy stations like Gallery Place and providing traffic control during incidents and coordinating criminal investigations. While all of the joint exercises and coordinated efforts have worked well to build relationships and enhance operational effectiveness, the best example of our joint efforts occurred on June 22, 2009, when 9 people were killed as a result of a collision on Metro's Red Line. This tragic incident required the coordinated response of numerous agencies. The district's fire EMS quickly coordinated a unified command which delineated the roles and response of all the responding agencies. The quick response and communications between law enforcement and first responders led to the determination very quickly that the event was not related to a crime or an act of terrorism. MPD immediately set up our Joint Operations Command Center to serve as an area command for police resources, and practice protocols were quickly implemented. Security perimeters were established on the scene to identify responders and restrict unauthorized personnel, and a rotation schedule was established to ensure relief of personnel. This was a 3-day operation. Radio communications and external communications with the media operated in strict accordance with the National Incident Management System and Incident Command System procedures. This incident exemplified proficient efforts in the responding agencies in dealing with disasters of this magnitude. Ultimately, while much collaboration has and continues to take place, it's imperative that relative partner agencies continue to train, exercise, and share information on a daily basis in order to effectively respond to any future scenario. I can assure you that the MPD remains committed to this process. Once again, I appreciate the opportunity to participate in the hearing today, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chief Lanier. Mr. Griffin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and members of the subcommittee. I am Anthony H. Griffin, County Executive, Fairfax County, Virginia, a position that I've had the privilege of holding since January 2000. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today on the security challenges facing the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, otherwise referred to as WMATA. My comments are formed from two perspectives. First, as CEO of the largest jurisdiction in the region by population and as Director of Emergency Management as set by the Code of Virginia. Second, as co-chair of the decision-making process for the National Capital Region since the inception of the Urban Area Security Initiative grants until the conclusion of 2010, or 7 grant cycles. Additionally, I served as Chair of the Chief Administrative Officers Committee at the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, otherwise referred to as COG, for 10 years. Based on my own experience, the 5 existing rail stations in Fairfax County, a shared bus facility, and having consulted with my police and fire chiefs, I can say that the relationship between Fairfax County and WMATA from a public safety perspective is very strong. WMATA is an active participant with the Chiefs Committee at COG and is present when security issues are discussed on a regional basis. On a police operational level, collaboration and coordination is good, whether with a specific district station or with the county's specialty units such as SWAT, K-9, or EOD, when there is a need for a station sweep or for high visibility. WMATA regularly communicates fire system status updates and when there are upgrades to equipment or modifications to stations. Fairfax County has regularly participated in large-scale multi-jurisdictional exercises with WMATA with a focus on rail security and safety. In summary, there is a strong professional relationship between WMATA and the county's public safety agencies, and I personally have worked well with the senior management of WMATA. As previously noted, WMATA is an active participant when discussing how preparedness in the National Capital Region can be improved, and the UASI grant process has been a major facilitator. It has been accepted by the participants that transportation is a key issue when considering threats and mitigation. Rail facilities and stations are recognized as potential targets, and rail is integral to being able to move a significant percentage of the region's population during a time of crisis. WMATA has access to other Federal grant programs specifically oriented to transit security and safety. However, the CAOs, or the Chief Administrative Officers, and the Senior Policy Group, the representatives from the governors, have agreed that WMATA should be a funding recipient because its security requirements exceeded its normal resources. Consequently, in addition to the NCR localities receiving and managing subgrants, WMATA was allocated funds for specific projects which would enhance its security and its ability to respond to emergencies. I have attached a list of the projects and the amount of money assigned. Is there a security gap? In my experience with public safety, there are never enough resources, whether it is with my own agencies or with WMATA. My job and our jobs is to prioritize the risk and to manage the resources available to the greatest effect and benefit. In my opinion, based on my exposure to the subject and WMATA, I believe that WMATA has done a good job with the resources available, but that if there were more resources available, it would help narrow the gap. I should note there will always be a gap, but I believe continued vigilance and effort will tilt the odds in favor of WMATA and the public safety agencies. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the privilege to speak. I will be pleased to respond to the committee's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. At this point, the Chair would recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And again, I want to thank all of the witnesses. Chief TABORN, WMATA's security program consistently ranks among the top 20% of transit systems nationwide, as measured by TSA inspectors using the Baseline Assessment and Security Enhancement Program, BASE. However, I know that items such as fully operational cameras at all stops are still lacking. So could you discuss some security needs that might exist or challenges that you think need some additional attention?
Well, thank you very much, sir, and we are very grateful for the Federal Government, the Department of Homeland Security, TSA, the Federal Transit Administration for all the support that they have provided to Metro over the course of many years. Many of those items that you talked about, cameras, we have a 35-year-old system, and it wasn't until 10 years ago when our second police officer was killed in the line of duty that those cameras did not have the capability of recording. As we have gone through the years, we have sought out grants to enhance our camera capabilities, and those are the steps that we are taking now. We have cameras that recently, through the UASI process, have identified 86 Metro Rail stations, so we'll have the opportunity through sharing with jurisdictional partners to see those types of things. But we are in the process working with the general manager and the new leadership to seek funds to provide more cameras in our systems. We know that cameras aren't always the solutions, but they aid in investigations or telling us what's going on in any particular period of time.
Thank you very much. I know that you were instrumental in developing transit security protective measures that have been adopted nationwide. Can you tell us about anti-terrorism training that your officers receive, and how often are these drills conducted?
Again, as a response to the events of 9/11, initially before the birth of the Department of Homeland Security, there was a $23.5 million Department of Defense grant that was given to the Federal Transit Administration to go out and do an assessment of transit properties all over the United States. Part of that involved three basic premises: enhanced employee training, emergency preparedness, and public awareness. And part of that training was a spinoff from that, the Terrorist Activity Recognition and Reaction Program that was given to transit agencies across the country, the BASS Behavioral Assessment Training Program that was spearheaded by the Transportation Security Administration, and it affords not only police officers but frontline employees what to look for from a terrorist standpoint. And so, as typified by the event in Times Square where a person saw something and said something, those are the types of things that we encourage both our employees as well as our riders to report something that may not be a big deal but may be the key to investigating crime. So training is something that continues to happen. TSA has a very good training program. The National Transit Institute, through funding from FTA, has a great training program, and it's getting this type of training through transit agencies across the country.
And how often are your officers evaluated?
We provide training every year. We are in the process now of providing training to all of our frontline employees, over 7,000 employees, for Metro emergency response training to familiarize them not only with terrorist tactics, but what to do in a case of an emergency. So that training is ongoing, and as new people come on the department, come on to the agency, we do a repetitive requirement to provide that training.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, would the Chairman yield for a unanimous consent request?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your graciousness. I'm not a member of the subcommittee, but a member of the full committee. I have a statement I'd like to enter into the record as a longtime supporter of Metro, expressing my support for management endeavors to enhance public safety and to encourage the Federal Government to do its fair share in support of the same.
Without objection, and thank you for being here. We are delighted to have you with the subcommittee.
I thank the Chair.
To our witnesses, our guests, and my colleagues who are probably as aware, if not more aware than I am, votes have been called. I think it's a very short series. Here's the pledge I will make to you. We will sprint to the Capitol to vote. We may walk briskly. We will go as quickly as we can to the Capitol and vote because we want to be good stewards of your time. I'm coming back the second I cast my vote. I know that other colleagues will as well. This is a very important hearing. So Mr. Davis has graciously offered to buy any of you drinks or something to eat if you want it during the break. We're going to come back. If it happens again, I won't make you do it again. But if you would indulge us to go vote and come back, I would be very grateful. And if it happens again, I won't ask you to do it again. So we will be in recess pending votes. Thank you.